Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Again, you can get a lot of this analysis over at Tarpley.net. Big post-election analysis there with the film clip from Russia Today after the elections, what to make of all this, what to do. We'll talk about that in a minute. We have a list of people that Obama should fire. It's time for Obama if he doesn't want to take the entire brunt of this, if he wants to hang on, he's got to fire Geithner. He's got to fire Sheila Bair at the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation because she's violating the law. She is in insurrection. She says, I don't care about the law. I work on too big to fail. And that means she shuts down little banks in Oklahoma and Georgia every Friday and doesn't do anything about those big Wall Street zombies, about Citibank, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase, and so on, and Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, too, since they are now supposedly commercial banks. They're all under her purview. They've got to be wrapped up because they are insolvent. But she says, no, they're too big to fail. I'm not touching them. I'm going to go after the Podunk Center Farmers Bank out there, and I'll leave the Wall Street guys alone. She has to go. That's a failure. Mary Shapiro, Securities and Exchange Commission, kid glove treatment for Goldman Sachs. Gary Gensler, Commodity Futures Trading Commission, no enforcement of anything on derivatives, completely struck out, nonfeasance, malfeasance, get rid of them. The other thing Obama should do is send a letter to Bernanke and say, your continued tenure at the Fed is incompatible with the overriding economic interests of the United States in wartime and states of emergency and a depression. My God, quite a combination. You have lost the confidence of the American people. You must go. I expect your resignation tomorrow morning. And I don't care about the legal technicalities. A president who did that would have the helicopter Ben on his way back to Princeton within 24 hours. But, of course, Obama is not a president. He's a Wall Street puppet. He will do none of these things. I'm simply trying to open the mind of the public with the various things that a real president might do. Here, you want to hear another one? J.P. Morgan is in a fight with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. This involves Washington Mutual. You'll remember Washington Mutual. It was the largest savings bank in the United States, and it was seized. It was seized under very, very suspicious circumstances. The overwhelming impression was that the Washington Mutual people had a big base of deposits and that J.P. Morgan wanted that money. It was essentially a vampire ghoul attack by J.P. Morgan. Well, it was really done by the federal authorities, by Sheila Bair and the controller of the currency in the Bush Treasury under Paulson at that time. And now the thing is, when J.P. Morgan took over WAMU, there are all kinds of issues that were not covered in the very bare-bones agreement that was signed. So what happens now? There's about $2 billion. J.P. Morgan paid the feds $2 billion for WAMU, but now it looks like they're going to get that back because these are now obligations of Washington Mutual that were not assigned and which J.P. Morgan doesn't want to pay, and it looks like they're going to win in court. And who is at the center of this once again? FDIC, Sheila Bair, a stealth puppet of the banks. Now, are there limits? I don't know. Always hard to tell. Here's one limit, labor action. Here in Washington, D.C., Washington Hospital Center, one-day strike by nurses. Now, whenever you see a strike, these are so rare that they become straws in the wind. We watched Greece fight back badly with no program and terrible leaders, but they fought. They're not culturally dead. They're not as decadent as some other countries. France fight back, but, of course, with no program, lousy leadership, and ultimately it peters out. Now, even the British, the U.S. commentators have been gloating that the excitable Mediterranean peoples, the Greeks and the French, would fight, but the British, of course, were stoic, and they had to stiff up their lip, and they were completely immune to protest movements. And now we got a bunch of anarchists smashing things up in London. Now, it looks to me like most of these are provocateurs. This is not the kind of thing that's designed to stop an austerity attack. It looks like it's actually a help for the Tories when you go smashing the panes of glass in central London. But was there any possibility that people in the United States might fight to defend their rights? Well, I guess we're going to find out. There is a level of rebellion which we want to point to, and this is an important one. Here's a guy that you ought to get to know. Tom Dart, Thomas J. Dart. He's the sheriff of Cook County, Illinois. Thomas J. Dart, sheriff of Cook County, Illinois, is now emerging as a defender of the American people against zombie bankers, hedge fund hyenas, and asset strippers. And what he's doing is, this is the sheriff of Cook County, Illinois, and he is refusing to carry out fraud closures for the zombie banks. Cook County is a fraud closure-free zone. The sheriff, Tom Dart, is supposed to physically push you out of your house and onto the street. And he says, I will no longer be doing the bank's work for them anymore. And the reason, of course, is that so much of the paperwork has been shown to be illegal. I can't possibly be expected to evict people from their homes when the banks themselves cannot say for sure that everything was done properly. So what he does is he says to the banks and their representatives, I want you to take responsibility under penalties for perjury that everything in this paperwork is legal and in order, and they refuse to do it because, of course, we've had robo-signers and robo-judges. We've even got a robo-president who just approves whatever garbage from Wall Street is sent over to the White House. So we've got a backlog of 1,000 evictions in Cook County, Illinois, where Dart says, I won't do it. We've got Clifford Rossi, former Citigroup lending official, now a business professor at the University of Maryland. He says, the allegations of illegal fraud closures, he says now, have incited something of a populist revolt, and it's become a political issue. Yeah, surprise. Too bad we didn't have a president or a Democratic Party that could have taken this up before the election, but we saw what Obama and Geithner did to this election. So Tom Dart is the leading edge. He says he's warned, if you don't do this, the judge might get you for contempt of court. He says, no, what I'm doing is just and legal. Here's the quote. When I had the lending institutions themselves admitting to problems, what are we supposed to do? All I'm asking them to do is certify what they are doing is legal. The fact that they are not racing to do this makes the case for us. So he says, why should I do it? If you won't take the responsibility for guaranteeing that it's legal, why should I be out in front? How can I be more of a zombie than a zombie banker? And this has to do with the obvious thing that the MERS system, right, the Mortgage Electronic Registration System, moved these ownership titles around, but they did not go through the formalities, which are the essence of law in this case, of changing the registration and the names of the owners at the local county offices and other government offices where this has to be done. So now we have Peter Nichols, Attorney General of the District of Columbia, outgoing, part of the Fenty administration. He says the district government reminds everybody that if you're a homeowner, it's not enough to have private tracking of mortgage interests through the mortgage electronic registration systems. And Nichols, Attorney AG of the District of Columbia, a homeowner should not be misled into believing that a threatened foreclosure is supported by the district public record offices when it is not. So what's the bottom line? Stop foreclosures, halt all fraud closures, 5 years or the duration of the depression on primary residences, whichever comes sooner. And we'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.